Hey everybody, welcome back to the Nidus Anarchy series. I'm your host Adam, CIO, co-founder of Nidus, and I have Darrell Geusz, the product owner of Neo with Ping with me today. And I'm super stoked because decentralized identity is one of my favorite topics, and it's very rare that I get to talk to someone that actually understands what decentralized identity is. And the fact that you're doing this from an enterprise platform is just huge. So you're the golden unicorn I've been trying to reach for a long time to find out what's going on in the space of decentralized identity. So first, why don't you kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, and then we'll go into Neo and the product.
Sure. Yeah, I'm about 25 years in the business. My first job in the industry, I was the first product manager for Touch ID, long time
Oh wow.
ago. The technology is actually that old. Um, and then along the way, did a lot of good, fun stuff. But most recently, I led a team of at a company called Idemia, and we built the world's first interoperable mobile driver's licenses and helped get them into
Oh
Apple Wallet. And we also built the TSA checkpoint that's used at the CADX airports in the US to validate your mobile driver's license.
wow,
And
that's
then
awesome.
about 3 years ago, I came over to Ping to help build that next generation platform for
Okay.
decentralized identity as well as identity verification.
Okay, awesome. So with that, since Neo is kind of your baby, what can you tell us about Neo? What is it, and
Sure.
what's it going to do for us?
Absolutely. So Ping Identities, has a long heritage in identity and access management, and actually originally coined the phrase federation and helped invent a lot of standards and a lot of the models that are being used today with backend integrations, where data and identity information is being authenticated and shared from backend server to backend server, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so more recently, our CEO, Andre, he's a visionary in many ways. He recognized the importance of the emerging model of using credentials and digital wallets as a transport mechanism and as a way to assert your identity and all your capabilities, your authorizations. And so Ping acquired a company before they hired me with all the core IP. It was a company called Showcard. And now
Mm-hmm.
what we've done since I've gotten here, we've actually taken the core tech and embedded it into the PingOne multi-tenant SaaS platform so that it can be provided and served up to the world. And so now what we're on, it actually launched the decentralized identity function launched last March of last
Mm-hmm.
year. Prior to that, about a year prior, we launched identity verification. And so, it's kind of two sides of the same coin. Identity verification is all about proofing and reproofing identities, making sure Darrell really is Darrell, and
Mm-hmm.
being able to do government ID verification and system record checks and things like that. And then decentralized identity is taking the results of that and creating a receipt proof, basically a proofing receipt, and embedding that into a digital credential in a wallet and adding in other goodies, other attributes that you might mint as an issuer, as an organization, as well as putting in authorizations and privileges, entitlements, affiliation, all represented in that credential. So that's going to help us in the future to reduce the amount of proofing that's going on. We do a lot, we have to type in a lot of forms these days every time we get a new
Yeah.
service, and we have to do a lot of all these background checks and proofing checks. And the idea is to reduce that significantly through these digital credential wallet and give us a new way to interact in a decentralized way to transport the data so that these backend integrations are not needed anymore. So it's
Okay.
hyper scalable for that reason, and it's more secure. The attack surfaces get reduced and get moved to the phone. So it's much harder for adversarial AI to do any attacking. It's much more difficult for hackers to do attacking. You got to hack every phone one by one by one by one. Very
Right.
complex. And by having that transport mechanism in your device now, you're moving data through you. Consent is now built into the architecture. Whereas with Federation, that's not the case. You will be tracked by default because of the design of the architecture. It is inherent to the design. So in this way too, privacy increases significantly. So security goes up, privacy goes up, and the user experiences are much, much better and less friction. And now they can be uniform over both online transactions as well as in-person transactions. So now the same credential, the same user experience can also enable you to do things in person, device to device or device to building, device to IoT device, right? So it really opens up the world of the user now and gets them just out of just the digital space into the actual reality space, physical space as well. So that's in a nutshell, some of the benefits and the reasons why this is
I feel like you
transformational.
just read me the white paper. Could you explain this to my
Sorry about
mom?
that.
Like,
Yeah,
no, this is,
yeah,
trust me, this is the information I like, but
sure,
like, I really want, because I find that really difficult to explain to just the layman how
sure.
decentralized identity works. And I start going down the
Yeah.
path of like, oh, there's like public-private key certs and, elliptical curves and all this other fun stuff and zero
No,
knowledge proofs. And then
yeah,
next,
yeah,
they're like, I have no idea what you're
sure.
talking about anymore.
Sure. Yeah, I think that, one of the best ways to use as an analogy is your physical credentials. So, one of the things I always do when I start out at conferences, when I speak, is I'll
Hmm.
talk about physical credentials and why they've persisted so long, why they're still usable, and they're actually solving a human perspective, a human need, not just a government or an organizational need. And the reason is because we can carry them with us.
Yeah.
We choose when we want to present them. They can be combined together, right, to create different personas. I mean, they're actually very flexible and very cool, carrying them around in your wallet. So in the same way, the digital experience can be just as cool and just like a physical credential, and be purpose specific. Your employee badge is for using at work, right? So I mean, these credentials can be created in a way that they fulfill a certain purpose or role or
So,
persona. And
so what's to
so,
prevent
yeah,
someone from just using someone else's wallet?
yeah. So I think that's where you still have these mechanisms to identify people, to verify
Hmm.
people's identity, whether that be through something like a PIN code that you can embed inside the credential, right? A
Okay.
six-digit PIN, or a selfie, a photograph that's embedded inside the credential, and you do a server-side selfie match at time of
So
presentation,
it's like the
verification.
face on your driver's license.
Same thing, right? So, like when you use the mobile driver's license at the TSA checkpoint, that's exactly what TSA does. They don't rely on Touch ID or Face ID or any of those things because they
Hmm.
can be compromised and they don't represent a single person. You can enroll
Yeah.
10 people in Android fingerprint. You can enroll five
Right.
people in Touch ID. So the TSA and government especially are high value use cases, including banking, probably healthcare, server side biometric matching and server side PIN matching from the data protected inside the credential is how it's going to be done. The holder of the credential is really me, right? The other cool thing with the digital credentials is that the wallet itself, with the cryptography there, with the secure
Hmm.
enclave and the secure element, that public key is used to encrypt the data, and then the issuer who issues out the credential, such as the
Hmm.
Department of Motor Vehicles or the bank, they sign the credential with their private key. And so the
Okay.
combination of those creates a package or an envelope that will only work inside that wallet. As soon as you take that payload out of that wallet, you can't use it anywhere else. You can't stick it in another wallet and try to present it. It
Hmm.
won't work. So even the standards-based mechanisms support this, right? So in that sense, the credential itself can be trusted because it's signed by the issuer, it's encrypted using the public key of the holder, and the data that's needed for presentation is all controlled by you. But you still have to validate the identity of the person, either
Yeah.
through a PIN code or through some mechanism, right?
So that was
And
going to be my next question: is how do you
yep,
validate the identity of the person? Like, because on my phone, right, I have my Amexes on my phone, so I can double tap and I can get on the subway using that
yeah,
way.
sure,
But now when we're talking about validating my identity, if it, through digital means, like not in
yeah.
person, how are you going to know that it's actually me that's doing that validation and not just my wife that's also got her face in my phone?
Yeah, exactly. So because the photo of the holder is inside the credential is one of the attributes. So when you
Okay.
present the credential, that photo, the verifier pulls that data and says, "Hey, Darrell, look in your camera, take a live shot, and I'm going to
Mm.
compare it to what's inside that credential." And
So every
so
time I present my like digital driver's license, I have to take like a selfie at the same time
depending on the risk
and
of
it,
the transaction, right?
okay.
So if it's a high value transaction or a secure transaction, if you're proofing, if you're using
Hmm.
it to enroll in something, probably. But if you're
Okay.
doing, if it's just a low risk transaction, if it's an IKEA credential for your loyalty program, who
Yeah.
cares? So you may not
Yeah.
need to do that,
You may
right?
want them to
So,
use it.
or you could always step up if there's some other risk signals or other reasons that you want to
And
trigger that, right?
would IKEA set that, or would the wallet, like would Neo the wallet set that level of risk? Like how's that, where is that
The
risk level set at?
Actually, the verifier decides what they want to do with the data that's
Okay.
in the credential, right? So if they know a photo's in there and they need to validate live against a live photo, a live selfie, then the
Mhm.
verifier can trigger that experience, right? If there's a PIN code available, maybe that's good enough, a 6-digit PIN, right? For example. But what it does solve is it solves the problems with the device trust. Whereas the mobile operating system, like you said, multiple people can be enrolled. The
Right.
keys you can re-enroll a new person and not change the private key
Yeah.
inside the mobile OS. So now that's that somebody could be substituted, right? So by having it bound and signed and sealed inside that credential, it's
Mhm.
the ultimate security from that perspective to know that it's really Darrell who was issued that credential, right? Does that make sense what I'm
Okay.
saying?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Definitely. So what? So what is Neo besides just a wallet for identities?
It's really the whole package. We have issuance of we have wallet management and device management, first of all, a pairing of wallets to the issuer. And then the issuer can then create credentials and schemas, what data they want to put in.
Mhm.
They can publish those. They can then issue them into the wallet. And then once that is in there, the issuer can do lifecycle management. They can revoke it, set an expiration date. If an attribute changes somewhere in a directory, they can revoke. If you are no longer in a group, they can revoke automatically, right?
Mhm.
So all that functionality is there. Then once it's in the credential, we have presentation and verification, being able to present that credential to a digital verifier. And then also we have our own verification service to be able to verify credentials. And they're interoperable, like Microsoft and Ping, we can verify
Mhm.
each other's credentials already, right?
Okay. So I'm not. So if set up, because I guess one of my biggest problem that I've been trying to wrap my head around is with the word decentralized. 'Cause I'm
Sure.
that old school
Yeah.
hacker nerd where like I'm a big open
Yeah.
source and all that kind of fun stuff. And decentralized, I work a lot with
Yes.
blockchain development, smart contract
Sure.
development. And so from a real decentralized, like all these vendor wallets, they just feel like they're being centralized to the vendor as opposed to being
Yeah.
dispersed around
I,
different like
sure.
SASs essentially.
Sure. So for regulated industries like banks, healthcare,
Hmm.
it's unlikely in the near future that data will ever be removed from their core databases and just move to a wallet, right?
Yeah,
It's just not going to happen anytime soon. Maybe someday. So
yeah, it's gonna be a very slow process. For
right,
the bigger and the more scarier,
exactly.
they're
But let's
definitely gonna be slow.
yeah, but like retail, take example, fast food chain, one of our big fast food chains that loves chicken.
Hmm.
They want to move all the data to the wallet except the email address. They don't want any other PII in their issuance system, in their world.
Yeah.
They want it all in the wallet. And then they want to be able to do very cool VIP experiences when you show up at the store, right?
Okay.
Using that identity, making sure you
Now,
don't
do
order.
I will I need
Yep.
Neo Wallet to do this, or could I use any wallet? Like, is it like an open
Sure. Good
standard behind
question.
this, or?
Good question. Good question. So in the early days of adoption, which is what we're in now, because this is the
Yeah.
marathon, right? Not
Oh
a
yeah.
sprint. So we're in the early days. There's going to be multiple wallets within different apps. It's going to
Hmm.
happen, like banks, the retail, the fast food chain. But in many cases, the functionality and the technology is going to be instantiated without the user ever knowing they have a wallet, right?
Hmm.
It could be an icon or a checkbox or whatever. You
Yeah.
don't have to have a Rolodex of cards like you do in, let's say, Apple and Google Wallet, right?
Yeah.
So near term, what will be happening is there'll be a lot of internal use cases and maybe affiliates, close sister organizations or partner organizations where you're going to be solving problems, and it'll be a whole new user experience. But the user may not even know they have a wallet inside the mobile app, right?
Gotcha.
Now, once you get to interoperability, when it's important that, let's say, for supply chain, when if I'm a producer of wind turbines and I show up at the electric company to check in as a technician to work on
Hmm.
the wind turbine, now maybe the Rolodex model makes a little more sense because the user has to say what they want to do or why they're there. And now you
Yeah.
have organization to organization interactions with different verifiers than issuer technologies, right? And in that case, then it could be a Neo wallet, but a verifier could be Microsoft or vice
Yeah.
versa, right? And there is a standard for interoperability between wallets such that Microsoft could issue a credential into Ping wallet and Ping could issue a credential into Microsoft wallet. That
Sure.
standard is called OpenID for VCI, and it's currently in public comment, and it's not
Hmm.
final yet. As we get further along, we plan to start working with various companies, including Microsoft, by the way, to make our wallets interoperable from an issuance perspective, right?
Nice.
And then that'll
Yeah,
help
because that was one of my
consolidate some,
questions. Like,
right?
how do you? Because if I
Yeah.
have my Neo wallet and I have all my identities in there, and I'm going out to
Yeah.
do something, and then is it like
Yes.
I don't know the business process of Neo, but is it something where all of a sudden my wallet I can't log into it because my license is expired or I didn't pay my monthly bill or
No,
whatever, or is it
no.
just it's just a
We're
tool that I can always use?
Yeah, we're an infrastructure company, so we always sit behind corporations, right? So whether it's your
Hmm.
bank, or whether it's your utility company, or whether it's a retailer, they're going to be embedding our SDK inside of their mobile app to start with,
Gotcha.
and that'll be the near term. And so, like I said, you might have two of our customers' apps on your phone. You actually might have two wallets, but they won't know about each other, and the same credentials won't be in both necessarily, right?
So I
Now,
could have like my phone provider app, and then in there might be like something that says powered by Neo or something along
sure,
those
fair
lines.
enough.
Is that
Yeah, I mean,
okay?
yeah, we
I got
don't
you.
interact directly with consumers. Now, in the future, the platform wallets, the mobile OS wallets, Samsung, Google, Apple, as they
Yeah.
start opening up and adopting more and more of these standards, then we can start consolidating wallets and have a single repository, as it were, storage mechanism that multiple apps can interact with and talk to.
Do you think
And
Apple will open up their wallet to this?
we'll see. I mean, we're hopeful. They did adopt the ISO 18013-5 standard for mobile driver's licenses. So that's a big forward progress for them, right?
Yeah.
The question is now whether it's going to be proprietary APIs to interact
Yeah.
through the web APIs, or whether they're going to also accept the standards like adopted by EI-2, February 29th, that was signed into law for all the European Union. And it
Right.
stipulates OpenID for VCI and OpenID for VP and SIOP2. So it's saying that any wallet that wants to work in the European Union has to adopt and embrace these standards, or it cannot be certified. So there'll be regulation that'll hopefully drive some of this
Hmm.
as well.
Yeah, and like that's a perfect example. So with Europe, and I've been saying this for a while now, they've, I feel like they've skipped the whole passwordless conversation and just gone straight to self sovereignty
Correct.
for identity.
In a
And
sense, yes,
I think it's the right move for sure.
for sure.
So it's pretty cool to see that they're farther along than we are, because I feel like now we're kind of seeing like, okay,
Yeah,
well, how does this play out? And I feel like a lot of companies here are watching Europe and be like, hey,
sure, sure.
how does banking with a decentralized ID
Yeah,
actually
yeah, yeah.
pan out?
Absolutely. And we're seeing the most traction in the US with government and financial services.
Okay.
Financial services in Europe is even more interested, including because of EI-2 and the new law.
Hmm.
And of course, government will come along in Europe as well and start issuing out. But even some of the banks are looking to monetize their ID. So the banks know a lot about you. They proof you to a very high degree, including Patriot Act stuff, including financial background, all different goodies. And so for them, they even see an opportunity with decentralized identity to monetize their bank ID, so that when you go apply for a mortgage, let's say at Rocket Mortgage, why can't you use your bank ID from Wells Fargo, right? To
Right.
apply for the mortgage and not have to type everything in again and not have to go through all this proofing again. It's the same
Yeah, because
regulatory process, right? So
so it's almost like a circle of trust. Like I trust Wells Fargo to have
community of
absolutely
trust. Yep,
identified you, so
exactly.
therefore I'll accept their trust. Right? Like it's like a
Exactly. Yeah.
identity federation.
It is through it, and it's decentralized is
Yeah.
the mechanism of data transfer. So you mentioned, well, I am always trying to explain decentralized. Part of it is not just where the data lives, but also how the data is transported, right?
Yeah.
So it's decentralized identity because you're moving it through the wallet instead of a backend integration. You don't need those backend integrations anymore. It's a lot cheaper, it's a lot safer, etc.
And does Neo have the ability to kind of do a almost like an attribute based reveal as opposed to the entire credential reveal? Like in a sense, let's take the
Yes,
driver's license as an example. I want to go to the bar and they want my ID. I
sure.
don't want them to know my address and where I live,
Yeah,
but I want them to know I'm over 21. Can I do something to tell them I'm 21? Okay, you're
sure.
good enough. Come on in.
Yeah, there's two options for that. One, First of all, selective disclosure is the first option, it's called. And that is the case where you can decide what attributes you want to reveal to the verifier. Now, if the
Okay.
verifier asks for everything and says everything's mandatory, you just probably say, no, I don't
Well,
want to play,
yeah,
right?
right. That's them.
But but smart relying parties will just ask for what they need, purpose specific. And so if it's your age, there could be an attribute in the credential that says over 21 that somebody that they trust is attested to, right?
Right.
Maybe you've gone through government ID verification ahead of time and as part of that issuing of that credential. The other option is to create an entire credential all by itself, and its only purpose is to attest that you are over
Age.
21, let's say. And those are typically called like zero knowledge proofs, right? Where
Right.
you can cryptographically say, hey, Darrell or Wells Fargo says I'm over 21. You should trust that. Full stop.
So
Or the government says I'm over 21. You should just trust that.
can you give an easy explanation as to what a zero knowledge proof is and how they work?
Yeah, sure. So basically, instead of sharing a date of birth to a relying party, like you mentioned, the bar or you're buying
Right.
alcohol or whatever, all you need is to show that you're over a certain age threshold. So, and it could even go as far as saying, you don't even need to know anything else about me, but the
Mm-hmm.
fact that I'm over 21 and a certain issuer attests to that fact. And
Yeah.
given those two things is all you need to know to let me buy
So
my liquor,
now
right?
on a low level, technical, talking to all the nerds listening,
Yeah.
how do zero knowledge proofs work?
Well, you think of it as a derivation off of one or more attributes. So it's an instantiation. You want to get technical. It's like an
Mm-hmm.
instantiation cryptographically of the fact that you meet a certain set of criteria, right, or
Okay.
eligibility, and somebody attesting to that fact. And so it's identity, affiliation, and eligibility, right? And all at
Okay.
once, that issuer is attesting that you meet the requirements for that particular use case, right? And they sign the credential, they sign it, and
Mm-hmm.
so you know you can trust it because you trust the issuer, right?
Right. So everything
Um,
comes down to essentially PKI, right? Like
in a
public-private
sense,
keys.
yeah, it could be blockchain based too, right? There's all different instantiation approaches, but
Mm-hmm.
all you have to do is check the public key of that issuer, and the fact that that credential's not been revoked, so a status list or a trust list,
Yeah.
and that's it, and you should be good to go.
Is there any blockchain backend to Neo?
Currently, we don't. So ShowCard had a lot of connections and integrations, both public and private. We kind
Mm-hmm.
of pulled all those back out for the initial release of the product last March, but we are going to start folding them back in one by one. And the
Okay.
reason, honestly, is because we weren't sure where the market was going to go, and we knew we had to deliver without it, without blockchain. A
Gotcha.
lot of our customers don't want it, right? And so one of our favorite models is called DID-Web, DID-Web, and that model allows the public signing key to be published essentially on your URL, on your domain. It's very
Okay.
unlikely that Sony.com's not running, or Sony's not running Sony.com. So you can
Yeah.
trust a public key that's attached securely to that domain. So that's called DID-Web. It's one of our favorite models that we love, right? It's a
Hmm.
simple, easy button way to check the issuer of a credential. But it doesn't mean that in the future we're not going to start folding back in various blockchain capabilities sets based on certain communities of interest.
So
Does that make
do
sense
you
what
have
I'm
the
saying?
ability to absorb Web3 wallets into Neo? Like Ethereum wallets?
Good question. Yeah, I think Web3 has kind of been struggling, as you probably know, in the last year or so, but there's nothing that prevents
It's been
us.
spiking right now.
Well, depending on your
Like in the past
perspective,
2 weeks.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it might go right back down again. Who knows? But
Yeah.
there's nothing that prevents us from doing even NFTs and things like this in our wallet. It's a
Yeah.
wallet is a storage mechanism and it's cryptographic, just like any
Mm-hmm.
of the other cryptocurrency wallets. So as far as from a construct, nothing prevents us from doing it. Let's put it that way. And
Okay.
we're part of the Open Wallet Foundation, another very important effort, by the way. It's under the Linux Foundation, and the idea is to build a framework with a set of tools and standards to be able to build wallets quickly and integrate them into your app. And so through the Open Wallet Foundation, the hope is that part of it will be, it's an open source wallet construct that will also support payment, physical access, hard keys, etc. in the future. So as more and more
Nice.
participants start piling into this open source wallet through the Open Wallet Foundation, any partaker of that framework can now serve up payment cards. They can serve up physical access credential. They could serve up NFTs as
Nice.
keepsakes, right? One of the big examples of that we have is some of our customers that are in large entertainment and sports would love to take your ticket that's tied to your identity to get you into the game and
Yeah.
convert that into an NFT that can be signed by the player as a keepsake, right? Because that's what people do with paper tickets today. Put their keepsakes
Yeah.
and they sell them even, right?
Oh,
So there's
it's
no reason why we couldn't do that.
I literally have, I don't know if you, I have like a book here, but it has all my concert tickets I think
There
I've
you
like
go.
ever been to
Exactly.
stored right here at my desk.
Right, exactly. So why not convert your digital ticket to get into the concert and maybe even
I
have
will
a
never
digital
agree with that
signature?
just because I'm old and I want that paper.
Old
I miss
school.
the paper ticket. I miss
Yeah,
waiting in
sure.
line for tickets.
We
But
can
we're not
always
going to get
print
into
it
that
out.
conversation.
You can always print it out on your printer, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
maybe the Gen Zers.
where do you see? Well, let's start with this. So, one of the biggest hurdles I found with decentralized, talking about this whole thing and trying to
Yeah,
explain, like, because to me, I see it clear as day. This is 100% where we're going,
sure.
but we're very much like you said. We're in the early adoption phase,
Yes.
very very early on. Um,
Yeah.
so there's a large amount of education that has to happen, and just
Yes.
a transference of understanding. How have you seen that happening, and what's been working best when talking to the
Sure.
enterprise clients, who I think are probably the most skittish?
Yeah, no, we spend a lot of our time educating. We even have decks and recordings that don't have our logo on it so that they
Hmm.
can reuse it internally to get stakeholders on board or present to the board of directors, et cetera, right? So we spend a lot of time educating. We are still in the major education phase of the
Yeah,
marathon. There's no doubt about it. I think the main thing we do also is we look at tactical challenges that we can solve using
mm,
decentralized identity. And those are usually our early use cases where the organizations and corporations say, yeah, this is cool. Now I can solve a tactical problem I have. I don't have to think about art of the possible that's 5 years from now when
yeah.
I'm sharing these credentials across organizations. I have an internal problem right now that you can solve.
What are
So
you
there's a
seeing
lot.
as kind of the top thing, like those ones that you're seeing most regular?
Yeah, so even like in financial services, being able to use the wallet to sign payment transactions and knowing that it's really Darrell, right? And
Yeah,
signing a transaction with the key from the wallet, right? And the credential presence. Also, right now, there's some of the standards like OpenID Connect. When you
hmm,
use them on a mobile experience, they're not very good. They're clunky. There's exception cases that look terrible in a user experience, right? So we're solving some of those tactical problems using decentralized identity because it's a different adaptation of OIDC, right? It's a new standard on top of OIDC, so it extends it. So those kind of tactical things we can solve right away. We have a bank that's very public, actually. It's Raiffeisen Bank in Europe, and they have 12 banks in 12 countries, and they have problems with cross-border banking. They have customers, including corporate clients, that operate in many of those countries, and they got to have 6 different accounts,
yeah,
even though it's a group of banks that work together. So doing cross-border banking for them, this is solving it for them. It's still internal, but it's a community
yeah,
of trust of banks, right? For example, so these are examples. Also, workforce, supply chain, contractors. That's a big one, right?
hmm,
Is Darrell supposed to be here today? We can put a work order in the wallet. Is he really related to the manufacturer of my wind turbines? Yes, he is. He can prove that. Is it really Darrell? He can prove that with the credential and capabilities, skills, certifications. Is he really certified to work on that model wind turbine?
yeah,
So all of that can be instantly. Trust can be provided to Darrell because you can do it very rapidly. Right now, that same wind turbine manufacturer takes 6 hours whenever Darrell shows up to work on the wind turbine to know who he is. Is he supposed to be
yeah,
here? Usually the person greeting him don't even know, they've never met him before, right?
yeah.
So for supply chain management, it's revolutionary. Honestly, you can do instant trust within moments of the arrival of a contractor, right?
So
It's pretty cool.
direct access to know this question because you've worked with TSA. Is this
Yeah,
something that will help reduce customs lines of like
it
for
could. Sure.
ingress
Yeah.
egress into the
Yeah,
countries?
you could extend it to international borders, not just do this, the domestic checkpoint, right? You could use it at international checkpoints. In fact, my old company was just involved in the first transatlantic crossing using a mobile passport between
Oh wow.
Netherlands and Canada. So the first mobile passports have just started rolling out, which is pretty exciting. You don't even have to
It
bring your physical
seems
passport with you.
like it's just
Right?
the obvious way. Like we do everything on our
Yeah,
phone. Like it seems
exactly.
every time someone says you have to pull out the actual physical ID
Yes,
of some kind, you're like, oh,
it's
really?
painful.
Like,
Yeah.
oh, where is this thing?
Exactly. Yeah. It's just going to take time to get there. The low hanging fruit of the, like I said, the internal and very clear use cases. And then over time, more and more use cases kind of just build on that. And everybody looks at this as, and my buddy Frank Cardella, who's my colleague here, he helps with go to market for Neo. He calls it the ultimate Rorschach, right? Because when somebody else looks at it, they see a different solution than when I look
Yeah.
at it, right? So it's actually so capable and horizontal. It's pretty neat, but it takes time to figure out, oh, I could solve this problem and that problem and this problem, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah,
Think a
absolutely.
bait and switch, a trucker picking up a load. How do you know it's the right trucker who's getting in that truck and driving off with $2 million worth of televisions, right? Like there's some real simple things we could solve very quickly, right? So these are like low-hanging fruit use cases that we see.
Now,
Bait and switch is a great one, right?
where's the logging taking place for audit capabilities on all of this?
Sure.
Is
Well,
it it's like if it's just an
mhm.
SDK, am I just reading capturing those logs and storing them myself, or is it something you guys also have that I
Usually
could
it's
tap into?
yeah, we have some logs, of course, the issuance data on the issuer side, the verifier data on the verifier side. But most cases for the user themselves, the app developer, whoever builds the app around the SDK will
Yeah.
actually can have a history of all the places you shared your identity, which by the way, we don't have today with Federation, right? So even that alone is very valuable to know all the places I shared my data, right?
So let me ask you
That
this from a big brother perspective. How can I restrict everyone knowing where I've been sharing my ID? Because maybe I don't
sure,
want the government to know what bars I'm going to and showing my ID to. How do I
sure, right.
restrict that information?
Well, that's the key is that the making sure that the issuer of the credential may or may not want to know or need to know where you're using that credential. So in the case of like mobile driver's licenses here in the US, the digital driver's license, there's absolutely no analytics going back to the issuer except basic stuff. But
How do
the
we
actual
know?
transaction of where you used it never goes back to the issuer, right? So there's
How do
ways
we
to
know
do
they're not
this.
doing it though? Like,
Fair
is it
enough.
just we just have to trust people?
Well, no, I think that's where the third-party wallets can play a key role. If you're using Apple
Okay.
Wallet or Google
Yeah.
Wallet, they can make sure that when you use
True.
that government issued credential, that they're not sending data back to the government. So it still involves a little bit of a trusted third party. It's whoever the app
Yeah.
developer or the wallet provider is the arbiter between
Okay.
two sides, the verification side and the issuance side, right? Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Cool. So yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
Where do you see Neo going, like from a growth over the next, let's say, 3, 5 years?
I think initially financial services is going to be the hottest area of
Hmm.
traction. And I think some key governments as well, including Europe, of course, with the new
Yeah.
regulation. Healthcare is just starting to spin up for us because that's another regulated space where identity is
Hmm.
important and binding, like your medical records to your identity, things like this. That's an area of growth that we're seeing. But I also think venues, any kind of events, sporting, when you start getting into in-person and online experiences where you need both,
Yeah.
could that's a real powerful player. Like I said, anytime you introduce this new in-person experience and you're using the exact same credential, the exact same experience, wow, that's really cool, right? So
How's the in person thing? Is like how do I show my driver's license? Is like NFC? Is it a QR code thing I'm scanning?
yeah, like for the mobile driver's license standard,
Yeah.
for example, you usually will engage. You begin the engagement using either NFC or a QR code scan, and then
Okay.
the actual data transfers typically through Bluetooth or Wi-Fi aware. So
Hmm.
it's two bands, right, working together. So your security key is shared and the actual data is shared at a separate out of band. That's how the MDLs work at the airport checkpoint, for
Okay.
example, with TSA.
Nice.
But
Very cool.
you can widen that to any kind of interaction in person. The cool thing is you can also do it in the desert. You can be completely offline and sell your car to somebody in the middle of the desert and do an exchange cryptographically. And then once you get back online, any kind of reporting can come up at that point.
So
So, you know,
taking
the
that
fact,
desert analogy, if I'm in the
yeah,
desert and we're hanging out in the desert, we're going to Burning Man,
yeah,
and I want to buy some, I don't know, some neon clothes from you or something.
yeah,
And I'm gonna bring out my, but it's like you need to know I'm 21 because they're explicit clothes. I don't know
sure,
where this
yeah,
analogy is going, but
yeah.
so when you verify, how are you verifying my
Yeah,
verified credential with the issuer?
the key is that you have to have a cache of those of the signer keys, right? The public
Okay.
keys. So if you have that, you're pretty much good to go. Now you could also download the trust list or status list, right?
Hmm.
The revocation list. You could also have that in there too. But if it's a retailer selling stuff at a stand out in the middle of the desert for Burning Man,
Yeah.
they can cache that in before they arrive, right? So
Got you. Okay.
that's
Cool.
the
Nice.
idea. Yep.
Very cool. So how does this work from like I don't know if you know if you want to talk about pricing or not, but like from a is it like monthly active users? Is it do you have to pay for every time someone scans a
Sure.
face? Like how it seems like because it's not like you're not selling it by CPU, right? Like and it's
Sure, yeah. In our models right now for digital credentialing, it's usually per identity per year is common,
okay.
but we do accommodate. So again, we're early days. It's a marathon, so we're pretty
Yeah.
flexible on business models as long as the use case makes sense. So if a government wants to pay per credential, like they do now with physical
Hmm.
cards, we can accommodate that. If you want to do a subscription model with your app, so many dollars per month, subscription, and we get a revenue share, we can accommodate that
Okay.
too. So Ping is pretty flexible at this time. I can't promise that'll be forever though.
Yeah. Well, you're trying
So
to get in, so
yeah,
it's
the
like
early
let's
adopters,
what can we
exactly.
make this work and
Yeah,
make a deal for them? That makes
yeah, it
sense
might
for
even
sure.
become market sector or use case specific at some point,
Yeah.
right?
So can people do live unlimited liveness tests, or is there kind of any type of a limiting on that at all?
Sure. Yeah. So what we do right now is for credentials that are issued by the first party,
Hmm.
any type of application or use case that you're self-consuming your credential, we don't charge you for the basic verification of the public key and also the status list stuff, right? So
Okay.
you can use it unlimited times for applications you manage, you control.
Gotcha.
But if you need to do selfie matching, that's a
Yeah.
different price. But it could be per user per year, right?
Okay. Yeah,
Um,
because I know that's
whenever,
now because there's more
yep,
costs that goes behind that
yeah,
for
there
sure.
depending on the methods of identification and that sort of thing, verification. And then if it's for a third party, let's say the contractor supply chain model, in that case, if you're verifying a third party credential like a Microsoft credential, then we'll get a
Hmm.
per transaction fee, but it's very small, right? It's a very small fee to just verify quickly that the issuer is who they say they are and that the status list is good, right? That it's not
Nice.
revoked. So for internal use and use cases, we don't charge extra for verification of that credential unless it's higher level biometric matching and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And then for third parties, you do pay a small fee to
Okay.
verify the digital credential, but it's a lot cheaper than proofing your identity over and over and over
Every
again.
single time. Right. Yeah.
That's a
Exactly.
lot more
That's a big
expensive.
cost.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely. Cool. That's pretty awesome. So, from a security standpoint, have there been any type of hacks or uh, kind of vulnerabilities from decentralized IDs where,
Sure.
like earlier on, that you then have patched or come with new technology to circumvent? Like,
Right.
I'm literally have never thought of even trying to attempt to crack them, but have you
Sure.
seen people trying to crack this type of technology yet?
There's been some, yeah, especially when the mobile driver's licenses first came out and some of the states were starting to get them out there. But if you build your mobile app, it's a combination of the SDK and the
Hmm.
building of the mobile app itself as well. But what we demonstrated is for the mobile driver's license, for example, unless you convince the holder to jailbreak their phone and then replace the app or side load a
Yeah.
reverse engineered app, that's a lot of social engineering. Unless you do that, it's pretty freaking sound. It's very
Okay.
hard to hack, right? So, I
Nice. I
mean,
was thinking like some type
cryptographically,
of
it's
a
very
phishing
strong.
scam of like, no, just scan into here and somehow like
Well,
relaying that
yeah,
liveness test or
that's
somehow.
that's harvesting data in that case. And then what you need is trusted verifier. You need to make sure the wallet checks that the verifier is not rogue and checks the
Yeah.
public key of the verifier, right? And
Is
by the
there any
way,
like
at the
distress
TSA
symbols?
checkpoint, that happens at the TSA checkpoint. Sorry, go ahead.
I was like, is there any type of a distress symbol? Like, sometimes you can, like, depending on the level
Sure.
of security systems you're putting in, you put in a distress pin or you have a distress code word
Yeah,
when
you
when
could. I
you're
mean,
putting in.
that's up to the issuer to have that in the credential. So if you wanted
Okay.
to have a distress by, finger or
Yeah.
biometric or whatever, or maybe you wink 3 times, I don't know, but
Yeah.
between the
Because
verifier
I
and the
could
issuer.
imagine, I'm thinking old school. You got a thug,
Yeah,
they grab some dude with a gun,
sure,
bring him up to the
sure.
ATM, put your card in, give me your money.
Yeah,
Same thing. It's like, hey, now it's like scan your face, and now I
yeah,
have access to all of your bank account information. I have access to
sure.
everything at that point,
Yeah, if they
right?
got a gun to my head, it's a different situation. But yeah,
Yeah.
that would be like a standardized schema of the credential between the
Yeah.
verifiers and the issuers, like in a banking world. Those standardized schemas can be created and published, and that could include some kind of distress mechanism inside, right? That's certainly doable.
Now,
Or maybe you
what
pick a
about
different credential, maybe the green one instead of the
transference?
blue one or something, right?
Oh yeah, it's like
Yeah,
pick which color is your identity color or whatever.
yeah,
I
exactly.
can see that. We've done those before. So how does transference happen in the sense? Let's say someone dies and all their identity stuff is in there, and it needs now we don't have the physical
Yeah.
paperwork anymore. We've completely moved to digital. Do we set up
Sure.
like a next of kin for our digital identity? Like, has this been something even discussed, or am I
Well,
way off in the distance?
it depends on the type of credential and if it's a government issued mobile driver's license, for example, probably, maybe you're going to be allowed to delegate it to your spouse, right? Or have your
Mhm.
children's IDs to get through the checkpoint or something
Right.
like this.
That's another one
Um,
too.
yeah, but are you really going to be able to share it out with your cousin in
Yeah.
Wichita or whatever to keep forever in case I die? Probably not. But you'd have to get reproofed and reissued that kind of a government ID, right? But if
Yeah.
it's your IKEA card or a lower risk, why not? Why not just delegate it to your friends and they can keep using it after you're dead? I don't know.
So you brought
uh,
up a good example, like kids. Like
yeah,
I'm actually leaving the country tomorrow with my kid,
yeah,
and
exactly.
it's he's at the age where I want to hold my own ticket, I want to hold my passport, and I'm like, you're
Sure,
out of your
sure.
mind. It's like,
Yeah, he
but
wants to
from a
use his own
digital,
phone. Yeah,
so if we're past that and we've moved to digital passports or digital
sure.
IDs, how am I managing their digital ID and not
Yeah,
them?
that's where you create family groups through delegation and
Okay.
governance, right? And so we have that on our roadmap. We don't have it all. We've got a design, but we haven't built it yet.
Yeah.
But in that model, you can create a family group, and maybe the issuer has to sign off, maybe not. Depends on the type of credential.
Yeah.
Uh, but then you can drag and drop, friends and family into your family group, and then you can delegate to each other, right?
Nice. Do you have
So
any other
that could
cool
be done.
stuff on your roadmap?
Yeah, I mean, we have that, and we also have tighter integrations with a lot of the data repositories. Like we have legacy, I'll call them legacy systems out there that have lots of data in them, or identity data from ForgeRock, the company we acquired, and also Ping, right? These are systems that are on-prem or they're in private clouds, and
Yeah.
creating adapters for those to enable them to do issuance and packaging without having to move the stuff to the sky. That's something we got coming. And then we'll have some advanced stuff around flows and pre-productized flows. So you have entire use cases built in DaVinci, our
I was
graphical
gonna say this has got to
orchestration
tie to
engine.
DaVinci.
Exactly. So DaVinci gives us this graphical orchestration flows, and building those pre-configured flows that are productized and then have authorized involved by PingOne Authorized, which is an authorization engine like used for
Mhm.
open banking and stuff like that. You can create a lot of cool out of the box capabilities. And the
Nice.
magic quad, I call them, the magic four is Neo, DaVinci, PingOne Protect, which is our risk engine that looks
Hmm.
at signals and fraud data, and Authorize, which is our
Okay.
authorization engine. If you combine those four, it's a powerhouse. You can do so much. It's amazing.
So last year, and I'd say like probably maybe even the year before that, I would say it was the year of Da Vinci. It was all about orchestration.
Yeah,
Everything was orchestration, and I've been touting it everywhere. I love orchestration,
sure.
and I love the tool. There's some shortcomings, but I like that the progress it's been making, and it's definitely
Yep.
a leader in its pack. So it's been doing great there. We just met up with Andre at the New York Roadshow. So we were in town
Yes.
last week for that, and now it's all about Neo. It's all about decentralized ID. It's all
Sure.
about preventing deepfakes and stuff.
Yeah,
So do
sure.
you see this internally as really being the year of Neo?
I don't know if it's the year, maybe the few years of Neo, but there's
Okay.
certainly the interest level has gone up, exponentially. I'll say that.
Yeah.
The level of activity is intense, and a lot of our existing customers are asking to learn more and, like I said, tactical challenges that it could solve. That's what they're
Yeah.
most interested in, right? Of course, they love talking art of the possible in the future, and we'll
Yeah.
all be, but I think solving tactical problems sooner is going to be very important. And also having wedges, which we have, so that existing applications that use federation, they don't have to change. They can start using data from wallets and they don't have to do anything, right? So we've got
Mhm.
cool adapters for that, where you snip the wire in the sky and you reroute it through the wallet, right? And the application doesn't have to change, right? So those kind
Nice.
of things are going to enable adoption faster and help our marathon and get down the line a little further. I don't know if it's the year of Neo, but it's certainly the first year where tactical problems are going to start being solved. Let's put it that way
Nice.
with decentralized identity instead of just pie in the sky someday
Yeah.
art of the possible, right?
And that's been the conversation for the last few years, has been like, it's
Yes,
coming when? I don't know. How? I
yes,
don't know. So it
exactly.
sounds like you're actually making progress and you're
We
getting
are
in and it's being used now.
absolutely.
That's
Yep.
awesome. So in the end then, what would you say would be the top three use cases for decentralized ID with Neo?
Sure. Yeah, for I think banking, financial services, there's several use cases within that umbrella.
Hmm.
And just having better interactions with your user, having a new channel of interaction, moving the account out to the edge and enabling the user to do more things with their account, I think is going to be the first stage. Follow on to that is bank ID, we talked about, empowering
Hmm.
your user to go to third parties and show their highly proofed identity to do things elsewhere. I think that one's going to be a fast follow behind that, and that might include payment at merchants and things like that. And then I would say the second area, I think government will continue to lead in certain
Yeah.
areas. We're starting, even U.S. state governments are starting to look at, uh, you know, things like birth certificates and death certificates and being able to issue those out as verifiable credentials, taxes and tax forms. So there's some
Yep.
things going on there. And then finally, I would say that workforce and supply chain is probably one of the most interesting that you can impact rapidly if you can get enough stakeholders on board, right? But even if you're the electric company in that analogy of the wind turbine manufacturer, even if you're the electric company and you're issuing that out to the contractor to just,
Hmm.
so it's self-consuming again, right? Even that
Yeah.
alone could be transformational for that electric company to be able to empower that contractor to get to work faster.
Yep.
Eventually, that contracting company will also have its own verifiable credentials and wallets and things that it could present and be honored. But if you're the consumer of contracting, if you're the end of the supply chain, as it
Hmm.
were, it's huge. You could start issuing them out right now and completely change the way you do processes.
Nice.
Does that make sense what I'm saying? So I
Yeah.
think that
Yeah.
is another
Absolutely.
hot one. So those are the
Yep.
three umbrellas I'd say of area
Nice.
of interest that I think, bait and
And
switch. Anywhere you
bait
see a
and
bait and
switch.
switch, yeah,
So it's a proofing,
in
like,
that
right?
supply chain.
You want proof that
It's in
this is what
effect,
it
in
is.
effect.
This is what we're
And
gonna
Darrell's
do.
supposed to be here today too. Whoops. Because so you can have a
And
work order or a
yeah, maybe
waybill
this isn't even
inside it.
you. I don't even know.
Yeah, exactly.
This could be a
Well, one
deep
thing's
fake
for
this whole time.
well, I was going to say, speaking of that, the adversarial AI and the generative AI is going to have a lot of hard time taking over your wallet and trying to be you.
Hmm.
So that's the other thing about decentralized identity and integrating through that wallet, through the data sharing model, is that it's very hard for AI to get in the middle of that. But in the federation model, it's not so hard,
Right.
right? And it becomes like a honeypot in effect for the AI to, as soon as it gets in, it gets access to everything, right?
Yeah.
So, having an AI hack a phone one by one by one by one by one by
Yeah.
one
It's a
and
targeted
trying to take
approach.
over you and be you and act as you, it's very complex and difficult.
So this tech and most tech, I find big businesses are always slow to adopt, but they're quicker when the end user is kind of demanding it because they're like, look, this is,
True.
I want this. Like other people,
Fair
like, I
point.
don't know why you
Yeah,
don't have
fair
this
point.
already. So, what would you say would be three things towards the consumer side that would make them more eager to want
Yeah,
to adopt a decentralized identity?
fair enough. Yeah, I think this is where, if you're using it for internal and the user doesn't even know they have a wallet,
Hmm.
they then they can't really demand it elsewhere per se, right?
True.
They can demand the user experience, however, which in effect means you need a wallet. So it's indirect, right? But I think the around bank ID or even mobile driver's license, if you can get enough usage locations, if you can present it and get enough places to make it valuable to you in your daily life, right? Then you can start driving adoption and consumers can start demanding the experience. You know what I mean? I think that's one of the challenges of MDLs, mobile driver's licenses, that a lot of the providers of the digital IDs don't have relationships with relying parties like we do at Ping. We can bring lots of relying parties to the table to start consuming these digital IDs from the government. You know what I'm saying? For proofing and
Hmm.
onboarding and things like that. And so we're in a unique position that way to be able to provide that to government issuers. Um, so we need that. We need more points of use. As soon as you start having more value on these credentials, because you can use them in more places, that's when the swell will begin. But I think starting internally, even with an organization and changing the user experience and having more ways to interact, that alone has value. And I think it'll help our marathon along to the
Nice.
next
Awesome, man.
milestone. Yeah.
Cool. I'm out of questions. If there's anything awesome you want to tell us about Neo, now's the time. Or
Well, I
otherwise,
mean,
I think we have an awesome. I've learned a ton like
yeah,
about Neo because like
absolutely.
I know what you're doing. The web page is very vague. Is what's going
Sure.
on. So this has
Sure.
enlightened me massively.
Yeah, we do have a playground.
Okay.
Actually, if you go to neoidentity.com, that's a separate web page, a micro website, and then inside there's a link to a playground where you can go and learn more videos and things like that. Um, but it's in the name, Neo, right? Like, remember in school we learned about neoclassicism, neoclassical, right? Like, it's something that's reinvented. It's a new way of doing something, right? So that's why we use Neo, because for Neo identity, it's a new way of expressing your identity, your digital identity. So I think that alone, hopefully will stick with our customers and with our consumers out there to understand that, think about new ways of interaction. And that's the idea here.
So it has nothing to do with the Matrix.
Well, I can't say. I
Maybe
might get
it
in trouble.
does. Awesome, man. Well, I
Certainly,
appreciate this.
red pill, blue pill. Our logo is red. Whoops. Our logo
It's
is
got a
red.
little red pill under it. I'm noticing. It looks like there. So. Awesome, man. Well, thank you. I really appreciate this. This has been super informative. I've learned a ton, so I really appreciate it. If people want to find out more about Neo, I'm guessing ping.com slash
Yeah.
Neo.
Neoidentity.com. So
Oh,
just
neoidentity.com. It's got its own domain. Nice. Perfect.
neoidentity.com. Yep.
Okay, cool. Awesome, man. Thank you.
Yeah, it's nice talking with you today.